That sentence used to echo in my mind like a broken record. Quiet, constant, cruel. For a long time, I accepted it. I swallowed it whole. I believed them. They stopped calling. They stopped writing. They stopped looking at me like I was anything more than a fading photograph in a dusty frame. Even when I was right there, standing in the same room, I felt like a ghost at my own life's funeral. But the thing about silence? It teaches you to listen. It sharpens your senses. And sometimes, if you pay attention, you can hear the cracks forming before the truth bursts out. That day, everything changed. It started as any ordinary Wednesday in Seattle. The kind that dripped with gray skies, cold rain tapping the window panes like impatient fingers, and the smell of oversteeped coffee hanging in the air. I was sitting alone in a corner cafe, hood up, laptop open, earbuds in, but I wasn't listening to music. I was eavesdropping. Old habits die hard, especially when you grow up learning that words behind your back carry more truth than the ones said to your face. 2 tables behind me, a conversation started. 3 voices. Familiar. Too familiar. I hadn't heard them in over a year. Not since the day they decided I no longer existed. That I no longer mattered. Samantha, Jules, and Tyler. Former friends. Former anchors to my once stable world. The same people who once vowed never to leave me behind. The same people who did. Their voices drifted toward me like smoke, curling around the memories I tried so hard to smother. At first, it was harmless. Laughter, casual gossip, brunch plans. Then came my name. Emily. I froze. It wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was worse. It was soft. Regretful. Almost reverent. Like they were remembering someone they had buried too soon. I can't believe we let her go like that, Samantha whispered. We didn't just let her go. We erased her, Jules added. And Tyler, his voice had changed, deeper, slower, heavier somehow. We were scared. She saw through all of us. That's what scared me the most. My breath caught. I couldn't move. My hands trembled around my coffee cup. My fingers itched to press record, to capture every word, every piece of truth they were finally willing to admit, when they thought I wasn't there. I wasn't forgotten. I was feared, and now remembered. The truth is, I hadn't just disappeared. I had been pushed, slowly and methodically, out of every frame, every event, every story. They stopped tagging me in photos, stopped inviting me to dinners, stopped asking me how I was. Slowly, one by one, they stepped back from the light we used to share and left me in the cold. At first, I thought it was me. Maybe I was too sensitive, too intense, too honest. The girl who asked too many questions, who didn't laugh when the jokes got cruel, who saw the cracks in perfect smiles. But now I realized it wasn't weakness they walked away from. It was strength. Because I saw them. I saw the envy Jules tried to hide behind compliments. I saw the guilt Samantha drowned in gifts. And Tyler, he looked at me like I reminded him of something he didn't want to feel. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was truth. I'll never know. Not yet. So there I sat, 3 feet away from a conversation that had no idea I was listening, sipping lukewarm coffee, heart racing, fingers still, and tears gathering silently behind my eyes. Because for the first time in over a year, I knew I wasn't crazy. They had tried to erase me, but even they couldn't deny what I had meant. I wasn't just a chapter they skipped. I was the plot twist they didn't see coming. The last night we were all together, it was my birthday. They forgot. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe forgetting was easier than admitting they didn't want to celebrate me anymore. I had brought cupcakes. Homemade, warm, with little gold star sprinkles I thought they'd like. I had spent the afternoon decorating them, thinking of how we'd laugh and joke and toast to another year of life and friendship. But they never showed. Not one of them. I waited in my apartment. Music playing, candles lit, everything perfect. At 10:43 p.m., I blew out the candles myself. The next morning, they posted photos from a rooftop party. Same city. Same time. Different invite. No room for me. I didn't say anything. Not then. Because sometimes silence says more than screaming ever could. But something inside me began to shift. Not immediately. Not like a movie montage where a girl cuts her hair and finds herself again. No, this was quieter. I started going on solo walks. Long ones. I started journaling again. Writing poetry in the margins of notebooks. Reading books I had forgotten I loved. And I stopped checking their pages. Stopped watching their stories. I told myself I didn't care. I lied a lot. But healing starts with small lies that become bigger truths. As I sat there listening to them speak my name, softly, carefully, I didn't feel anger. I felt power. Because I had survived their forgetting. And now that they remembered, I didn't need them to. They were speaking up now. Maybe out of guilt. Maybe curiosity. Maybe because they finally realized what they'd lost. But I had already learned to live without their validation. Still, something inside me shifted again that day. A click. A turning page. Because sometimes, the people who walk away from you have to watch you rise from a distance they can't close anymore. And that's what this story is. Not just about being forgotten, but about being remembered on your own terms. You'd never guess from looking at me that I used to be the kind of girl who made the room light up when she walked in. I wasn't always this quiet, this guarded. I wasn't always the girl who sat alone in coffee shops listening instead of speaking. There was a time I was the one people listened to. The one they turned to for advice, for comfort, for something real. My name is Emily Harper, and I was never supposed to be forgotten. I was the middle child in a loud, ambitious family from Portland. My older sister Michelle was the golden child, prom queen, scholarship winner, picture-perfect smile. My younger brother Ethan, the rebel genius, always in trouble, always adored.
Me?
I was the steady one, the emotional anchor, the peacemaker. I learned early that being dependable made you invisible. But I didn't mind, not at first. In school, I found my identity in helping others. I was the friend who stayed up all night on the phone. The one who remembered birthdays without Facebook reminders. The one who gave second, third, fourth chances without ever expecting anything in return. It wasn't until I met Samantha, Jules, and Tyler in college that I thought maybe, just maybe, I could be more than that. It started in sophomore year at the University of Washington. We met in a creative writing workshop, the kind where everyone pretended to be more damaged and more brilliant than they actually were. Tyler sat next to me during the first class. He had ink-stained fingers, tousled hair, and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much for 20 years of life. He quoted Bukowski like it was gospel and challenged every professor who spoke in absolutes. Samantha came into the picture through Jules, roommates, childhood friends, practically inseparable. Samantha was the type who always had a perfect manicure, a controlled laugh, and a habit of locking eyes with you until you forgot what you were saying. Jules was warm, quietly sharp. She had a poet's heart and a psychologist's brain. She studied people, not to judge them, but to understand what made them tick. Together, the four of us became a unit. We called ourselves the Pages, a nerdy inside joke from our first writing class. Because we write our own stories, Jules said one night, wine in hand, eyes glossy. For 3 years, they were my home away from home. Group study nights that turned into spontaneous road trips. Sleepovers that lasted until the sun came up. Long, deep conversations about life, love, and the kind of heartbreak we all swore we'd never cause each other. We had dreams. Big ones. Tyler wanted to publish a memoir before he turned 30. Samantha was climbing her way into political science circles, already interning for high-profile campaigns. Jules was building a platform for young women in therapy and social justice. And me? I just wanted to tell stories. Stories that made people feel seen, understood, less alone. I thought they saw me that way. But looking back, I realized I was the background character in their spotlight scenes. It didn't happen all at once. That's the most dangerous thing about being forgotten. It's not a thunderclap, it's a slow erosion. A missed text here. A sorry you weren't in town there. Fewer invitations. Less laughter. Samantha grew colder first. Not rude, just distracted. Her texts became shorter. Our conversations more surface level. Jules started canceling plans, always with the kindest excuses. Just overwhelmed. You understand, right? And Tyler, he just vanished emotionally. He stopped sharing. The boy who once cried in my kitchen over a rejection letter now barely replied to my messages. I kept showing up. To birthdays. To events. To help. But over time, I became the girl who's always around. Not because they wanted me there, but because they didn't know how to tell me they didn't need me anymore. And the saddest part? I still tried harder. Because I thought if I just loved better, deeper, more quietly, they'd come back. It was winter break. We were all supposed to meet at Tyler's apartment for a game night. I had baked brownies, picked out a movie, even brought silly matching socks I found on sale, little traditions we had made over the years. But when I arrived, no one was there. The apartment was dark. Silent. I called. Texted. Waited. 30 minutes later, I checked Instagram. There they were. A story post from Jules. Laughing, champagne glasses clinking, at a rooftop bar downtown. My name wasn't there. Not in the tag. Not in the room. Not in their lives anymore. I stood in the cold, snow gathering on my coat, holding a bag of socks and brownies like an idiot. I don't remember the drive home. Just the silence of my apartment. The way the lights buzzed too loudly. The sound of my own heartbeat as I put everything away without a word. I didn't confront them. I didn't cry. I just stopped. Stopped reaching out. Stopped trying. Stopped pretending I wasn't hurt. That was the night I learned what it really meant to be forgotten. What they never saw, what no one saw, was how hard I worked to stay kind in a world that treated sensitivity like a disease. They didn't know about the therapy sessions I attended just to process being unwanted. They didn't know I stayed up late reading self-help books and poetry that reminded me I still mattered. They didn't know I started writing again. Really writing. Not for praise or likes or workshops, but for me. They didn't know that every time I smiled at their photos, it wasn't grace. It was grief. Grieving friendships that once felt unbreakable. Grieving the version of myself who thought love always meant loyalty. Grieving the girl who gave her all, only to be edited out of the narrative. And yet, I didn't disappear. Not really. I just became harder to find. I changed my number. Deactivated social media. Moved into a new apartment with tall windows and too many books. I started volunteering at a local shelter, teaching kids how to write their stories. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, I began to rebuild. Not for them. For me. Because I deserved to be the main character in my own story. Even if they weren't there to read it. It started with a letter. Not an email. Not a text. Not a DM. A real letter. Folded paper. Handwritten. Sealed in a cream-colored envelope. No return address. It showed up at my doorstep on a cold Friday morning in March, tucked between a flyer for yoga classes and a package I never ordered. At first, I thought it was junk mail. Maybe a wedding invite from a distant cousin. But when I opened it, my hands trembled. It was from Jules. Emily, it began. I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't even know if this is still your address. But I had to try. I had to say it. I sat down slowly on the edge of my couch, heart pounding, the letter crackling slightly in my fingers. You were never meant to be forgotten. And we never truly forgot you. We just didn't know how to face you. The words sank into my chest like rain soaking into dry earth. She wrote of guilt, of shame, of fear. She said I had always been the light in the group, the one who listened, the one who saw them, truly saw them. And that, over time, being seen became uncomfortable. Vulnerability wasn't their strength, it was mine. And instead of rising to match it, they turned away from it. From me. And then she wrote the sentence that cracked something deep inside me. We said you were too intense, too emotional, too much. But the truth is, we were too shallow, too scared, too insecure to meet you at your level. I folded the letter before I could finish it. I wasn't ready. That letter set something off inside me. For months, I had built a calm, silent life. A life without noise or drama. A life where the past was kept locked behind thick walls. But that letter? It was a key. A door cracked open. And behind it was a storm I wasn't sure I could contain. That very night, I had a dream. I was back at the rooftop bar. The one from that Instagram story. Only this time, I was sitting at the table. I wasn't ignored. I was the one talking. But no one listened. They were laughing over me. Louder. Crueler. I screamed. No one even looked up. I woke up sweating. Heart racing. That ache in my chest, the one I thought had healed, was back, raw and sharp. The next few days passed in a blur of restless energy. I couldn't focus. Couldn't read.
Couldn't write.
The letter burned in my drawer, whispering like a ghost I couldn't exorcise. I tried walking it off. 5 miles one day. 7 the next. I avoided the cafe. Too risky. Too soon. But the city was smaller than I thought. It was Tuesday afternoon when I saw Tyler again. He was standing in the same cafe, ordering a matcha latte. Still wearing that beaten leather jacket. Still tapping his fingers when he was nervous. He hadn't seen me. I could have walked away. No one would have blamed me. But I didn't. I walked up, placed my order, and stood beside him.
He turned.
His eyes widened. And then guilt. That messy, unmistakable guilt. Emily. It wasn't a question. It was a plea. I nodded once.
Calm. Cold. Not angry. Not yet.
Did you get my message? He asked. I shook my head. I haven't heard from you since, well, since the night you all disappeared. He looked down. I was a coward. Silence. We all were, he added. I said nothing. Because there were no words that could glue a broken vase back together, not when they were the ones who smashed it. We sat. He asked. I answered in pieces.
He told me they talked about me.
Often. That Samantha had wanted to reach out, but didn't know how. That Jules was the one who finally broke the silence. That they'd been carrying this weight for a year now. I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't the same boy from college. There was a heaviness to him. A tiredness. A man realizing too late what he lost. I asked the question that had haunted me for a year. Why did you do it? He paused. Because you made us feel seen. And when people see themselves too clearly, they either grow or run. He exhaled. We ran. 2 days later, another envelope came. This time, it wasn't just a letter. It was an invitation. A gathering. At Jules' loft.
Private.
Just us. A chance, they said, to say what should have been said a year ago. I sat with that invitation for a full hour. Was I ready? Did they deserve that?
Did I?
I wasn't sure. But I knew this. I wouldn't go for closure. I'd go for truth. The air was cold when I arrived. Jules' loft looked exactly the same, and yet not. There was something sobered about it. A new painting. Fewer plants. The energy had changed. Samantha opened the door. She looked surprised. Then emotional. You came, she whispered. I nodded. You asked. Inside, Tyler sat on the couch, head bowed. Jules stood by the window, holding a cup of tea like a lifeline. No laughter. No music. Just tension. Thick as fog. I sat. Waited. It was Jules who spoke first. She apologized. Not just in words, but in the way she looked at me. Honest. Ashamed. She said I deserved better. That they had failed me. That they had been too caught up in their own fears to see the damage they'd done. Samantha spoke next. Tearful. Tense. She confessed to feeling threatened by my strength because it reminded her of what she lacked. Tyler apologized last. His voice cracked. He said I was his biggest regret. That losing me was like watching color drain from his world. And when they were done, I stayed silent for a moment. Then I said this. You said I was forgotten, but now you remember. And the truth is, I never needed you to. They looked stunned. And I realized that was my power. They had spoken up. But I had already risen. I didn't go there for forgiveness. That's the truth I clung to as I sat across from the 3 people who once defined my world.
Jules.
Still with that thoughtful gaze, but older now. A little more worn. Samantha. Her eyes rimmed with the red of unshed apologies, her voice steadier than I'd expected. Tyler. Quieter than I remembered. The poet whose words once danced now hesitated at the tip of his tongue. The room pulsed with tension, not anger, but something deeper. Something that had lived in silence for too long. I sat back, folding my hands in my lap as Jules broke the silence again. "We weren't trying to hurt you," she said, voice shaking. "We were just afraid." I leaned forward slightly. Afraid of what? Samantha answered this time. Of what it meant to really be close to someone who saw us. Without filters. Without excuses. She swallowed hard. "You gave us space to be honest. But we didn't want to live in honesty. We wanted comfort." Tyler looked at me then, raw and direct. "You made us feel like we could be more. But we chose less." And there it was. The core of it all. They didn't leave me because I was too emotional, too intense, too loyal. They left because I was the only one willing to grow, and that terrified them. I stood up, walked to the window where the city lights glowed like scattered stars. My voice was calm, but my heart roared like thunder inside. "You didn't just leave me," I said quietly. "You erased me, uninvited me, untagged me, like I never mattered." They said nothing. I turned around to face them. And the worst part? I believed it. I believed that I was forgettable. That being the quiet one meant I could just be written out of the story. Tears welled in Jules' eyes. "But you were never forgettable." I shook my head.
No.
I wasn't. But it took me losing you to remember that. That was the moment. The moment the energy shifted. Not in their favor, but in mine. What came next wasn't easy. They wanted reconciliation. But I wasn't there to comfort them. I was there to speak the truth I had swallowed for far too long. "You didn't just forget me. You replaced me." Samantha tried to interject. I held up my hand. "Let me finish. You celebrated milestones I helped you build without me. You told inside jokes I helped create while I watched through a screen. You didn't just forget me. You rewrote the ending without including my chapter." I exhaled. But the story didn't end there. They looked confused. So I told them how I started writing again. Not blogs or short stories, real work. A memoir. Essays. Letters I never sent. How I began working with teen girls. Girls who also felt too loud for their families and too quiet for the world. How I learned to celebrate birthdays alone. How I learned to choose peace over pity. How I stood in front of my reflection one day and whispered, "You were never the problem." They listened. Really listened. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to shrink for them to hear me. "I forgive you," I said at last. Their eyes lit up. But I wasn't done. "But that doesn't mean I can go back." You could see the breath leave their bodies. Tyler whispered, "We hoped." I shook my head. "I know. But I don't need hope. I need healing. And that's something I've already found without you." That was the most empowering sentence I had ever said. When I left that night, the air was sharp and cleansing. I walked down those familiar stairs, past the broken elevator, past the fire escape we used to sneak onto for late-night heart-to-hearts. I didn't look back, because there was nothing left for me behind that door. Not resentment. Not revenge. Not regret. Only closure. Real closure. The kind you write for yourself when the world refuses to give you an ending. I got another letter. This time it was from Tyler. No apologies. No begging. Just a thank you for showing us who we were and who we could have been if only we'd been brave enough to stay. I didn't write back. I didn't need to. Sometimes being forgotten is the greatest gift because it forces you to remember yourself, to rewrite your value, to rediscover your voice, to realize that your worth isn't defined by how loud others cheer, but by how deeply you stand in your own truth. I was never too much. I was never too sensitive. I was just real in a world that preferred masks. And that's unforgettable. You've heard my story, not just the parts where I was left behind, not just the letters, the reunions, the apologies, but the part that really matters, the quiet in between, the part no one claps for, the chapters no one sees, the healing, the rebuilding, the remembering of self. Because being forgotten by people you love doesn't mean you vanish. It means you have to fight harder, not to be seen by them, but to be seen by yourself. That is the real journey. And maybe it's your journey too. Have you ever felt like you were fading from someone's life while they didn't even notice? Have you ever been the one left off the invite, untagged in the photos, quietly removed from the group chat, with no explanation, no closure, no goodbye? Have you ever questioned your worth because someone else decided you were too much? Too honest? Too emotional? Too real? If the answer is yes, I need you to know something. You are not alone. Sometimes, we wait for people to come back just so they can finally say the words we craved. I'm sorry. You mattered. I see you now. And sometimes they do come back. But even if they don't, that doesn't change the truth. You mattered the whole time. Even in the silence. Even in the shadows. Even when your name was no longer spoken. Your existence was never dependent on their acknowledgement. You're not a reflection of who stayed. You are a product of your own light. I used to think closure came in the form of an apology. But now I know better. Closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision.
A decision to stop waiting.
A decision to stop shrinking. A decision to reclaim the parts of yourself that others tried to convince you were too much to love. They said I was forgotten, but I was only ever hidden beneath the noise of their fear. Now, I've come home to myself, and there is nothing more powerful than that. To anyone who feels forgotten today, let this be a reminder. You are not invisible. You are not replaceable. You are not too complicated or too difficult to understand. You are simply someone who feels deeply in a world that often avoids depth. And while others may turn away, the right people, the ones who truly see you, they will never be afraid of your light. They will not flinch at your truth. They will not silence your voice. They will stand beside you, not above you. And until those people arrive, or until you become that person for yourself, I want you to hold on to this. You were never forgotten. You were always becoming. So now I ask you, what will you choose? Will you keep chasing the validation of people who walked away? Or will you finally stand in the glow of your own becoming? Will you keep rereading chapters that only brought you pain? Or will you turn the page and start writing a new one? In your words, in your power, in your truth? You already know the answer. That strength you feel rising right now, that's not just hope. That's you. I am not here to be remembered by the ones who forgot me. I am here to live, fully, fiercely, and fearlessly. Let them speak now if they must. Let them return if they choose. But I will never forget what I learned in the silence. I am whole. I am worthy. I am still here. And so are you.